Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar on emotional intelligence for every professional. If this is your first time joining us, welcome to Minds and Beyond webinar. At Minds and Beyond, we look at educating the public on mental health conditions and practical mental health needs that we need for our daily living, be it in our social cycles, in our personal life, or in our professional lives. We know that technical skills get a lot of people in the door. For anybody to be here, if you're a professional, we know that you're a competent professional and you have all the technical skills that you need. But we also understand that it can be quite tricky to navigate the complex needs of emotion in the workplace. And without emotional intelligence, it would be very, very difficult for us to be able to cope, to lead, to adapt, to stand out in the workplace. And that's why we are having this conversation today. We are delighted to have Dr. Tiwatayo Lashe with us again today. My name is Adebusola Adegbola. I'm a specialty registrar in psychiatry with the NHS. And I am also a weight loss coach and nutritionist. I help women who are struggling with weight loss with the basic needs that they need to be able to achieve their goal, which for a lot of women also requires mental change and a lot of mental health needs. So I am delighted to be here today, and I'll pass the baton to my co-host, Omotola.
Thank you very much, Adebusola. It's such an honor to be here today. First of all, it's a big honor to have Dr. Lash Become here. This is the second time in the space of less than a year that he's coming back to give us this elite talk on emotional intelligence, and I'm more than delighted. I'm excited. I'm ecstatic to have him here because now I can confidently say that he is an emotional intelligence expert. For those of you that were here the last time he presented, that was in July 2025, you can tell and you can confirm that he definitely did a brilliant job. And that's why we've just had to bring him back. Like, we can't get enough of this intelligence. It's not just someone talking emotional intelligence. It's someone that has lived experience, and we keep seeing it in his everyday choices. So welcome everyone to Minds and Beyond webinar. My name is Omotola Ajayi, and I'm a higher specialty trainee in general adult psychiatry. That's my 9 to 5. My 5 to 9 is as a co-founder of Minds and Beyond, amongst other things like personal development. And I'm just so excited that we've got everyone on board now. So I would just like to ask us if you're able to share the link, let other people join, because tonight is going to be electric, and I mean it with every sense of responsibility. Right. So without further ado, we'll be introducing Dr. Tiwatayo Lashe, and Adebusola would be giving us that beautiful rendition. Please pay keen attention as she does this. You're muted.
Just a moment. I'm just going to bring up a
Okay.
citation.
I've got it if you want me to read it.
Yeah, you can read it.
Okay. All right then. So please pay keen attention because we're about to be wild. So Dr. Tiwatayo Lashe, MBBS Ibadan, MSc, MBA, FWACP in psychiatry and ACIPM, is a consultant psychiatrist and healthcare management executive. He was born in Ibadan, Nigeria, to Professor Victor Lashe, a professor of psychiatry and addiction medicine, and to Dr. Abiola Lashe, a psychiatric nurse with a PhD in intellectual disability. He grew up in Ibadan and studied medicine and surgery at the Premier University of Ibadan, after which he worked in various private and public hospitals before proceeding to the Federal Neuropsychiatric Hospital, Yaba, for his psychiatry residency. Dr. Tiwatayo Lashe graduated as the best candidate in his cohort, earning the fellowship of the West African College of Physicians. While in residency, Dr. Lashebikon pursued an online master's degree, earning an MSc in business psychology from the University of South Wales. During the later years of his training, he also served as the pioneer public relations officer of the Association of Psychiatrists in Nigeria, early career section. After completing his residency, he moved to Barcelona, Spain, to pursue an MBA at IASC Business School, which is ranked third in the world in 2025. He has also received training from prestigious institutions such as Johns Hopkins University, London Business School, and the University of Washington. He is a certified human resource management professional, an associate of the Chartered Institute of Personnel Management of Nigeria, and an associate member of the Academy of Organizational and Occupational Psychiatry. During his MBA, Dr. Lashebikon worked with the investment team of We Venture Capital, the corporate venture capital arm of a biotech multinational headquartered in Barcelona. He also collaborated with the Center for Research in Healthcare Innovation Management at IASC Business School, assisting private and public healthcare organizations with business strategies. Additionally, he spent 6 months in the Barcelona office of a Swiss headquartered consulting firm specializing in market access and business strategy for biopharma companies. Talk big pharma. Beyond clinical care, Dr. Lashebikon has experience in research. He's co-authored 10 peer-reviewed scientific publications, primarily in addiction psychiatry and psycho-oncology. He's also written papers in healthcare venture capital, healthcare business consulting, innovation management, and hospital management. Currently, he works as an associate with the Center for Research in Healthcare Innovation Management in IASC Business School, Barcelona. He also serves as a non-executive director at New World Specialist Hospital and the Pizzas Hospital, both in Ibadan, Nigeria. Dr. Tiwatayo lives in Barcelona with his wife and daughter. He's a Christian and he enjoys teaching the Word of God, watching football, and spending quality time with family and friends. Ladies and gentlemen, please, with a virtual round of applause, help me welcome our bespoke emotional intelligence speaker and a man that wears many hats. Thank you. Over to you, Dr. Tiwatayo.
Thank you very much, Motola and Adubsala, for inviting me. And thank you for reading my resume. You know, I used to feel very awkward when people read out my resume, and I mean, read out resumes generally, and I always thought it was a bit vain, you know. But then, about 2 years ago, I was doing a course on leader and communication, and realized that many times, you know, the perception that the audience have about the speaker, you know, actually what's the word to use now, opens the door, you know, to whatever he's saying, he or she is saying. And so now I've come to realize that a good citation is not a bad idea, because it opens the door for them to think that I have something good to say. So in any case, thank you for inviting me again. I appreciate this. It also means that I didn't do too badly last time I was here. So I'm going to be talking about emotional intelligence for, you know, career folks, and we are going to start with a brief lecture type of discussion, and then a couple of exercises, and then maybe questions and answer after that. And if at any point you ladies think I'm speaking too fast, please just just call my attention and let me go back. Is that okay? So, what is emotional intelligence really? And many people have tried to define it, but I think a very easy way to go about the definition is that emotional intelligence is the ability to recognize one's own emotions to be able to understand your emotions, manage your emotions, and then do the same 3 things for others. So therefore, you're understanding other people's emotions. Also, you're recognizing other people's emotions, rather, recognizing it, trying to understand it, and trying to see how to help them manage their emotions. You notice I say trying to understand because with emotional intelligence means that you cannot understand completely another person's emotion. So the best thing that you can do is to just try to understand, and try to place yourself in their situation. You can never be in, anyone's situation, even identical twins, with 100% similar genetic makeup, would definitely have still don't understand each other every single time. But the consciousness of understanding that people are made up of emotions, understanding, recognizing these emotions, and being able to manage it is essentially what emotional intelligence is about. And it's very important, right? I was speaking somewhere recently, I think it was last year, and I was talking about the importance of emotional intelligence in marriage, and emotional intelligence is something that we use everywhere, we use in life. So not just in the workplace, but at home. At home, emotional intelligence is very important. But here we're not talking about marriage or at home. Today we're talking about in the workplace. And it's leadership with emotional intelligence, there's a difference, it shows. Teamwork with emotional intelligence, there's a difference and it shows. And EQ teams, perform a lot better. Productivity is better, engagement is better. In fact, studies show that, teams with high EQ leaders are 30% more likely to report safe and inclusive work environment. And then there's innovation, there's collaboration. And one example I like to give is, I'm a medical doctor, I trained in Nigeria. And this is not just in Nigeria, it's an issue that is present in many, many parts of the world where the medical training is very hierarchical and there's very low psychological safety when you get to work. And what happens is that junior doctors can really lead innovation because emotional intelligence is low, psychological safety is low, it stiffens innovation, it stiffens collaboration. And this is present in different workplaces. Now that I am not only a clinician, I also do a lot of healthcare innovation work. I can tell you that teams that have very high EQ tend to do better. Let me give you an instance. When raising funds, when a startup is raising funds, like when Omotola was reading my resume, she talked about me working in the VC world, and VC is essentially looking for a VC is a fund, that's I don't know how familiar we are with the term. So let me just loosely call it a mini bank. That's not what it is, but just for the purpose of explanation now. And startups go to these mini banks and say, we want to, please, can you invest in us, for some equity rather than debt, although now they are doing some debt in the virtual space. But in any case, and what we realize is that many people get funded. There's a lot of emotional intelligence displayed in the short interaction that you have with the investors. You are speaking with the investor and is asking you a question. It seems to be focusing on something, and you quickly pick it, right? And you start speaking towards that direction. Or these investors seems to, one of the things they check out, actually, in the almost all venture funds, one of the things they check out is the kind of fit that you have, the people fit, right? Is this person coachable? Can this person, regulate his emotion? And that is just to tell you that, in almost every work area, success is largely dependent not just on your IQ, but your EQ. And I mean, I think I should have mentioned it initially here in the first slide or the second slide, that there are 5 domains of emotional intelligence generally, which we are going to talk about today. And we're not just going to talk about these, we are going to give specific examples, And the first is self-awareness, self-regulation, then motivation, empathy, and social skills. So I'm going to go one by one with the first one, self-awareness. And I would say that self-awareness is probably the most crucial, the most foundational emotional intelligence component, because without self-awareness, it's difficult to then regulate. It's difficult to have empathy towards others. And self-awareness is something that can be developed. In fact, I think that I may go towards the extreme sometimes in my my self-awareness. When sometimes you have to be careful that self-awareness doesn't become self-doubt. But it's the ability to understand your emotion, the ability to understand your triggers. That's self-awareness. There's something called metacognition, the thinking about what you're thinking, reflecting on your own thoughts. Throughout today, I've been thinking negative thoughts. Why? That is self-awareness. The ability to understand that human beings are all biased. We have innate bias. And that's something so I check my biases regularly. I'm a football fan, and many football fans don't recognize their own bias. Whenever the referee blows against you, he's cheating. The referee is a cheat. He has been paid. But when the referee blows against the other team, it's because it must be correct. So in other words, it's good to just check your bias, and that's self-awareness. And if we did that a lot, I'm sure the world would be a better place. And so part of self-awareness is understanding your triggers. Anytime this lady comes into the office, I think that's when I get upset. So now that's the beginning. You're already realizing, okay, this is exactly what is wrong. And then you begin to think, why do I get frustrated when she walks in? And then you can plot it. But if you're not even aware that you are frustrated and you're not aware of the trigger, then it's difficult to make amends. So self-awareness, I would say, if I were to spend time on any of these concepts, the most I would say is self-awareness. Very important. And of course, self-awareness builds on the next one, which is self-regulation. Because you are aware of your emotions, and then you say, okay, can I alter my emotions? And yes, you can. There's something that we call cognitive behavioral therapy. Sorry, it's a concept in psychiatry and psychotherapy that talks about actions and behaviors come majorly from how we think, what we think, and then what we believe. So what you think affects what you believe, and what you believe affects what you think. And this comes together to affect your actions. So that's the purpose, that's the whole foundation of CBT. And that's true, in all areas. So you have to think, why am I thinking what I'm thinking? What exactly is bringing these emotions? And then you can begin to change your thoughts towards that thing exactly. And I want to give a practical example. I gave an example before of this particular, maybe you're in the office and this lady, maybe it's your boss, is whenever she gets into the office that you get frustrated. You've recognized it in step 1. Now we're in step 2 about self-regulation. Instead of just getting upset every time, you can begin to think, okay, first of all, why am I offended? Maybe it's because about 3 weeks after joining the office, she became very critical of your work, and you say, oh, okay, this is it. And it's one of two things. It's either this person really doesn't like you, or no, she was just being critical because the work was not good enough. And woe betide you if it's the second one and you think it's the first. What do I mean? Your work is not good enough and she's being critical of your work. But then you think, no, it's just because she doesn't like me. I bet she doesn't like Nigerians, And so that means that you're not aware enough yet. Your self-awareness is not yet, So before we move to self-regulation, we have to be sure that you've navigated the self-awareness and you've gotten deep down. This is really the cause of the offense. And then you can begin to say, okay, how do I react to this then? How do I adapt to this? Okay, she doesn't like this, she likes this. I want to give a particular example that happened just last week. So, we were quite busy at work, quite busy. And there were some mails that were supposed to send out that I didn't send out. And at the end of the day, you can imagine that the person, the partner now means like the client, but this person wasn't a client like that, was a partner in the project. Then sent an email and says just a reminder, Tiwa, and then copied my boss. I was like, oh no, and then my boss goes, I thought we had settled this, you've not replied. And I said, oh, I'm sorry, actually I should have replied, but busy, whatever. But and it happened, I think I had two incidences, in 24 hours, something similar, unreplied emails. And this was Thursday/Friday morning. I said I was not going to carry this across to the weekend. That was enough self-awareness. So what I did, there was another project that the deadline was supposed to be the following week. But what did I do? I quickly ramped it up, make sure that before 4 p.m. on Friday, I sent it to her, to my boss, and I did a fantastic job at it, right? And sent it across to her, And she just, sent my reply. She just, can we jump on the call quickly? Said, oh, this is so fantastic, great work. And then she said, oh, sorry about yesterday. That was a bit pissed. I just thought you had sent it out. It's okay. Now my point is that I was aware, that I should have sent the emails. I messed up, So myself, the awareness level was, really high. And then I said, okay, what do I do to try to remedy this? I didn't need to send the work on Friday. I could have sent it on Monday, But imagine if my response was, why? Everybody gets busy. I messed up just today. I've never messed up like this before. So why is she upset? And then maybe I get offended. I go talk to a colleague. Say, can you imagine what the boss was really upset for something as simple as 2 emails, whatever. And then the colleague starts saying, true, even me too. And then we start exchanging woes, right? And maybe call it gossiping, whatever. That is not self-regulation. That's not self-regulation, because I start even getting more upset. So the importance, this is what we call controlling your emotions. It's something that I say, will I call it a phrase or a clause now that I used to say a lot. I say control your emotions. So I tell myself, control your emotions. Control your emotions. And that is a very important part of the workplace. Being able to control your emotions. Being able to talk to yourself. I talk to myself a lot. So I say, Tuato, you have to calm down. It's okay. It happens. You have to calm down. Being able to adapt. There are some weeks that you're going to be very busy at work. Some weeks you're going to be less busy than others. Being able to adapt. Someone sends you a ridiculous email, 2 minutes to closing time, and you're wondering, why did they send this since morning? Reacting and say, I'm not going to answer this person till tomorrow. No, probably it's within your rights to do so. But be sure of why you're doing what you're doing. And be sure that you're not just reacting, but you are in control of your emotions, whichever way you decide to approach it. And so these two parts are very key. The next part of emotional intelligence that I should definitely mention is motivation. And motivation talks about internal drive. Internal drive. Many people, so I have a friend, the friend she's looking at me right now. She's one of those people that's very motivated on Mondays. Homotola is very motivated on Mondays. I'm not sure so many people are that motivated. But motivation is something that typically there's a phrase now. I can't remember the phrase now. It says something and wins, rises and wins. I'm not sure if that's the right phrase.
Waxes and wanes.
Thank you. Waxes and wins, right? That's motivation. We rarely are motivated, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. And it takes self-awareness to know when you're motivated and when you're not. That's the first thing. That's why I said self-awareness is very key and fundamental. There are times when you're thinking, maybe you start a job, it happens a lot. There are times when we are motivated. I think we are most motivated when we start something. You start a job, the beginning of the year. Generally speaking, motivation for work is typically higher on Mondays than it is on Fridays. Midday Friday, you're already thinking of the weekend. You're very motivated for the weekend. So motivation typically starts. However, there are so many things, there are so many pressures, external pressures that are against this our internal drive. There are external pressures that are against it. So external pressures sometimes like, workload, family life, poor salary, the economy, so many external pressures that you begin to think, why did I actually take this job? Why did I actually start this master's? And this is why some of the key skills for motivation in particular include resilience. Resilience is the ability to recover emotionally and professionally from setbacks. Because there will be setbacks. But being able to push against the setback is very important. I know there are people who find it easier than others. To be fair, genetic makeup is something. So maybe some people just genetically, they're a bit more resilient to others. Good. However, many of these, the psychosocial aspect, of resilience, that is apart from genes, plays a very large role. So it's not because you were born resilient, it's something you can develop. As a scientist, I need to say, yes, some people are generally more resilient. So maybe because of your genetic makeup, because of your upbringing, because of say early childhood events, because of your family and all that, maybe you're already 70% there in resilience. Maybe someone else is 30% there in resilience. But the truth is that it can be developed. Resilience can be developed and be worked on. It starts from self-awareness. When you reflect over the last 5 years and say, okay, what has been my reaction to setbacks? In fact, 5 years is a long time. Think about the last 1 year, and think about the setbacks you've had. How did you react to the setbacks? That is the beginning of developing resilience. There are a few people who, as a result of depression or any other mental illness, may find it difficult to be resilient. And it's important they get help, they seek help. But so many people who do not necessarily have any diagnosed or diagnosable medical condition also are not resilient. It's like your emotions are like paper. So the wind comes and then it blows it away. And that's why I like to say, so I talk to myself a lot. You know, I talk to myself a lot. I talk to myself before an issue happens, and I think that is when it's easiest. You know, and then I talk to myself during issues sometimes. Mm. And then, you know, being able to so let me, I want to give examples about at work especially. And I think that so there are two areas, major areas where I can divide, you know, the attacks that that affect our, you know, resilience. The first one I would say is, you know, you're out of job, you know, and you've been applying to 15,000 applications, you know, and you say, you know what, I'm going to stop. You know, you've been trying to write an exam, professional exam, and then you keep failing, and you say, you know what, I'm going to stop. You know, the thing about it is that very few people go on LinkedIn and say, oh, I just failed an exam yesterday. But people do fail exams. Very few people go on Instagram and say, oh, I just got a rejection email again. You know, but these things actually happen. And so realizing that this is common to man, you know, is an important concept in resilience. And what do? You try again. And then the second, you know, is at work. You know, sometimes you feel like, you know, you're not meeting your targets. You know, you are not growing at work. You know, your motivation goes down. That is when you go back to, what am I doing? What I'm doing? And that's exactly how, you know, we push through criticisms, push through rejections, push through, you know, so many things that are attacking our resilience. Now, the fourth part, empathy. Empathy. Oof. I think that many people think empathy relates to leaders, you know, but empathy is something that is a trait that everyone should have in the workplace. You know, the ability to understand and genuinely share the feelings and perspectives of others. I mean, is what if you were in their shoes? That's empathy. You know, try as much as possible to think about it, not to say it, because like I said, you're adding anybody's shoes. You know, but just think about it. So, for instance, let's say your boss, you know, has been nagging, you know, before you decide whether this boss hates me or not, you know, just think about it. If you were in this person's shoes, would you be happy that there were emails left unanswered? You know, these are that's, you know, empathy. Try to think about it, and it goes a long way. You know, it goes a long way in the team dynamics. It goes a very long way. I remember that I used to I don't know how safe it is to give this example, you know. Anyway, but I will give it. All die and I die. So I did my MBA in a very international school, you know, about 50 or 60 nationalities, right? And so, anyway, some of my Black colleagues felt that, you know, people, maybe some people are racist because they think Black people look alike, you know, and it was a thing. In any case, there was this lady that was in my class for 1 year. Actually, two of them were in my class. They were from China. They were in my class. One of them, we did an internship together. So that's after 12 months, 9 months of class, 3 months of internship. And then after the internship, I was talking with the other one, talking about the internship, and I was talking for like 5 minutes. I noticed she was, looking a bit, surprised and what's going on. But then I thought it was my accent. So I tried to speak a bit slowly, and then after a while, she says, Tiwa, I think you think you're talking to Tung. I wanted the floor to open up and just swallow me. I was so embarrassed. So apparently, I confused the two of them. I really did. And that's despite the fact that they were both in my class, and one even we worked together during the internship. So in any case, then I realized that I was making the same mistakes that some people make when they confuse me and someone else. And so this is me not giving excuses for people who are racist or tribalist or whatever. It's just to say that I did something as terrible as that. Then I began to understand, okay, this is probably how the other person is looking at it. And so that's what empathy really means. Many times our points are valid, but so is the case many times for the opposite person. And the good example here is the example of the elephant. I don't know if you've ever heard of this picture or seen this picture rather of an elephant with a very long a big elephant, and people were looking at it from different perspectives, and calling different names because they didn't see the total picture. So in any case, always consider what is the point of view this person is looking at it from. Whether the person is your subordinate, your colleague, or your boss. Because psychological safety is a very important key part of workplace. And empathy drives that. Empathy drives that. I have a few other examples to give here, but because of time, I'm going to move on, to the next one. The last one says social skills. I have a feeling that this is, every time I speak about this, I always say that, from number 1 to number 4, in my opinion, they're part of social skills, But when the people that designed the framework, this is how they put it, so it's okay, But here they've defined social skills, as the ability to build robust relationships, influence stakeholders, manage conflicts effectively, and that's fine. And it's social skills for me is like the icing on the cake. It's the painting on the wall. The foundation is still self-awareness. And then you build on that, it's self-regulation. Then you add to that motivation. You add to that empathy, and then social skills. The ability to persuade people. If you don't understand your emotions, the emotions of the other person, is difficult to persuade, to influence. Without empathy, it's difficult for you to build trust. And these skills, influencing, building trust, is very important. These skills are very important skills, in the workplace. There are social skills that we tend to neglect. And very few, there are some companies that social skills were not considered as important until maybe 2-3 years ago. And so I saw, I think it was on LinkedIn, I believe, or on social media, I'm not sure which one, where a senior developer was complaining that now they're asking for social skills, for tech jobs. That 8 years ago, no one was interested in your social skills. Can you code? Are you a good UI UX designer? Are you a good backend tech guy, and that was it. But now people are asking for social skills. So even the jobs that social skills were not supposed to be important, now they are becoming important. So there are very few, and now that in the age of AI, where many technical jobs would be democratized, something that would make you different will be the social skills that you have, will be your emotional intelligence. Understanding that the department seems to be tense today, reading the room, is very important. Today, one of my colleagues, a bit older, she had her son was competing in a field hockey tournament, and so she said during lunchtime, she said, "Oh guys, my son is competing for this, and can we watch it together?" During lunch. So, oh, okay, why not? She was going to send the link to us to watch on YouTube. I said, no, you know what? Let's book a room, and then plug it to the full screen, and then we watch it together from the same big screen. You know what I mean? And so that's that kind of, little suggestion already shows that I was buying into the idea of us doing something together. And so those are little ways in which you can build social currency at work. And social currency at work is very important. Sometimes we say things like, it just seems as if I'm not a culture fit. It just seems like, but the reason you're not a culture fit is because, one, you're not even aware of the dynamics in your office. You're not aware of the politics in your office. You're not aware of the different emotional states. You're not recognizing all this, and you're not seeing how to play with it. This is not to say that there are no toxic workplaces. There are toxic workplaces. I'm not denying that. This is not to say that there are not toxic human beings. They are very toxic human beings. But even in a non-toxic, basic workplace, there's a way to make yourself have more social credit, and emotional intelligence plays a role in this. There's something I want to mention here, and it's very linked to domain 4 and 5, which is active listening. And we're going to do some active listening now. Actually, active listening will be the next one. Will be after this slide is active listening. But now this is individual self-reflection. And I want us to just, if you are not driving, get a paper, for the next minute or so, get a sheet of paper, and just think about a recent workplace situation. Think about a recent workplace situation, a meeting, a project, conflict, whatever, where emotions were heightened, and how this directly influence the final outcome. Just write it down. And you don't have to share, we can call one person if anybody feels like they want to share their own story, but if not, no pressure at all. This is just an individual thing. I want to just think about it. And next thing will now be using the framework that we just gave. Think about it. Which of the 5 EQ domains was most relevant? And then the last thing you're going to do is write down one specific way you could have handled the situation differently by applying the skills from that domain. I'm going to shut up for a few minutes, and actually allow us to do this. So think about a situation that happened recently at work. It could have been the last few weeks, last few months, or maybe actually about 5 years ago, whatever, and then think which EQ domain was most relevant, and then consider the alternative. Is there a different way that you could have handled the situation and applied a skill from that domain. So I'm just going to give 2 extra minutes, for us to think of something. Is that okay? Okay.
Yes, please.
Silent. Okay. Be comfortable in silence. We don't have to play music. We don't have to, just let's wait for the 2 minutes and then. Okay. So now I'm stopping us because of time. Anyone who wants to share, who wants to get no pressure?
To volunteer if no one else is willing.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So thank you for this reflective piece. Recall a recent workplace situation. I remember it was very recent. It happened just yesterday. Yes. And I was supposed to work with someone to achieve something. We're supposed to see a patient, and the person definitely had a filled calendar. It was filled to the brim, and it didn't look like they would have enough lead time to complete the paperwork and whatnot. And at that point, I know that the person is usually very friendly, happy, go lucky, but on that day, it seemed like they woke up on the other side of the bed, right? So what happened was immediately, I wish I had a negative one to share, but I want to say that I've learned very well from your first session. So I was able to handle the situation well. So immediately I noticed that the person was overwhelmed. I said, okay. So there's typically, like, when we go out like that to see patients, there would be a part that I would complete. There'll be a part that they are supposed to complete, but anyone could really complete that part. But it's just like division of labor. And then I kind of just asked, like, oh, would you be able to complete so and so part? And they were like, oh yeah, I can send you the form. So typically, like, if I didn't understand the situation, I'd have just said, oh no, there's no need to send me the form, just complete it, and then I already have a lot of paperwork to do, which was what some 2 people had advised me to do, right? So, but I just said, okay, you know what? I understand what is going on. Just send it to me, and we can feel it together. How about that? So I didn't like completely take on the responsibility of feeling it, so that it doesn't happen over and over. But in that situation, I was able to say, don't worry, we can do it together, and I'll supply most of the information. So I was able to employ almost everything. I was aware of the situation. I was also aware of their emotions, self-regulation, although I could almost feel slighted and cheated But I was just like, no, that's not what's happening. This person is usually kind and helpful. I was motivated to carry on the task because at the end of the day, what is my why is the patient. I want the patient to get better. And then I was empathetic towards the situation. But again, I'm just sharing this because it happened yesterday. I'm not always like this.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
thought you were perfect. Like, for instance, I'm perfect. I don't do any wrong. I've never asked my
know.
wife, and fact, perfect. Okay, thank you. Thank you
Okay.
for sharing your example. Thank you. And the reason for this exercise actually is to actually allow us to think and not necessarily about the past. It's so that next time a situation happens, you remember, that there was this particular workshop you attended or this particular, webinar, and you start thinking, okay, I can use this skill. That's why, and me talking and doing all that, it has some good effect, but then interactive, learning makes it stick better, and that's how I wanted to do the exercise. The next exercise would have been better. The next exercise would have been better in breakout rooms, but we don't have the for whatever. Just forgive me. And so I think that we may adapt it a bit different, see if it works out. If not, we just move on. But what I want to bring out of this is active listening, and active listening is very key. Sorry, in empathy, and also listen. It also helps with your developing your social skills. And what is active listening? Many of us do passive listening, aggressive listening, no listening at all. And this happens a lot if it happens a lot in the workplace, everywhere, sometimes your spouse is speaking with you, your partner is speaking with you, and they are saying they have been speaking for 2 minutes. And then they're like, are you even listening at all? Say, oh, sorry, I wasn't listening. Or you say, hey, yes, actually, yes. But they should never have to ask. Why? Because there are ways to show that they're listening. So you give full attention. That's one. You listen to understand and not to reply. And this is something that I want to learn, particularly in an argument. I think I do have active listening outside argument. But during an argument, many times you are listening and you just want to actually are hearing, but you're not listening because you just want person to learn so that you can fire back, and you can't have empathy that way. You have to listen to try to understand the person's picture first, not just listening to reply. You have to pay attention to verbal cues because it's harder now in the day of video calls, to catch non-verbal cues, but there are actually still non-verbal cues now. Sometimes there are even verbal cues. Thank you for there are verbal cues, that someone says, "Oh, I'm so happy," but that smile is not, no, that's not. So what you're saying, is not your affect, and what you're saying completely different. So you want to pick these things, and then there's what we call reflexive listening, very synonymous to active listening. And you know what that is? That is saying what the person said back in form of a question. And so you say, you mean that so much yesterday you weren't able to see a patient? I mean, that is saying what the person said in form of a question, like you are trying to clarify. And this is very important. And then the last one would be responding, with empathy. And now, because of time, I want, Motola to tell us the story she gave us again. And this time around, I need a volunteer to actually do active listening. Anybody, let's practice active listening based on the 5 things I just said now. Who wants to
I can
practice?
volunteer someone since everybody's
I mean, if there's no volunteer, I'm happy to listen.
okay.
All right. Okay, so let's go. You can tell us the same story you told us before so that, we don't have to start thinking very deep.
Okay. Hi, Bisola. Guess what happened at work yesterday? These people will not kill me. This is how I was on my own. No, they asked me to see someone, and I was supposed to go with another member of staff, right? And maybe because I'm new at the job, I don't know. But for some strange reason, the task that the other person was supposed to carry out, they decided that I was going to do it on top of my own normal doctor work. So I had done a lot of work, but I had to think about it. And when I reflected, I was like, okay, I think this person is actually usually very helpful, very happy, positive vibes, and they just seem quite busy. And so I said, okay, that we can do that part of their own work together, so that makes it easier. And sure, you understand. And then I was just like, but somewhere within me, I was like, this thing must not happen again. I don't want anyone taking me for granted. But I try not to express it because I was trying to be in their shoes that, okay, so that, they might just be having a bad day. And I just wanted to be a supportive co-worker. That's my story.
Mm, okay. So it sounds to me like suddenly yesterday you had to do work for 2 people. Is that right?
No, I wouldn't say throughout yesterday. I think it was just one
For
part.
that
Yes.
particular patient that you had to see, right?
Yes, yes.
Mm. And that must have been very hard. How did that make you feel?
It was not hard because it was not really a big deal. It's just that I didn't want to be taken for granted.
You didn't want to be taken for granted. And that sounds really reasonable, that you didn't really want to feel taken for granted. Well, I think that you really handled it with grace. And the person probably understood that as well.
Yeah, they did because I had to call them close to the end of work and they were so gracious in their response. They were like, oh, you can have my number. You can call me for any problems at all. So I guess I had some social currency. Thank you. The end, right?
Okay, thank you. Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, ladies. Thank you. Before I make any comment, does anyone have a comment? What did Adibsola do well? What do you think she could have improved on? Anyone?
Okay, I would like to respond to that.
Okay, thank
I,
you.
thank you very much. I think she responded well, like she reflected on the things she said and also made some clarification. I like the part where she asked that was it throughout the day, and Moti replied that no, it's just for a period of time. So I think the active listening, what you have been teaching us, came on board in that conversation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for that. I can see a hand up. Please just go ahead.
Okay,
That's
so
Chidi. Yes.
from what yes, sir. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
What I can did well was one, um, ensuring no interruption
Mm,
while she was talking. So that was actually listening, and then the active listening aspect, which is not just keeping quiet and not interrupting, but really paying attention to what she was saying, and then asking only clarifying questions, not trying to poke, and um, eventually trying whether maybe she was able to solve the problem, but then showing attempt to solve the problem. I think those are quite attributes of active
Thank you so
listening. I
much,
would
Chidi.
say never knew those were components and things that I would like to have learned this time around. Thank you so much, sir.
Okay. Thank you so much, Chidi. Okay. Back to Omoti and Adibusola. Thank you so much for allowing us to use you guys as examples. And everyone is correct. You were giving cues. You were nodding your head, right? So she could see that you are listening to her. At a point, started sound like a therapist, which is good. Why? Because that's actually why people find it comfortable talking to a therapist, because of active listening, But also the would I say where I want when two friends are talking, they probably don't want the other person to sound like a therapist all the time, And so how we can improve that is that sometimes there are pauses that your friend makes where you can actually, ask your questions around this time rather than waiting for a 2 minute monologue before asking, especially when it's a friendly discussion. Now, if someone is weighed down and person is talking to you, then you want them to finish before you, ask clarifying questions, before you ask reflexive questions. But if the person is a bit bubbly, like Omotola was, it's okay when there are brief pauses to actually ask the question then. Say, you mean this was yesterday? I say, yes, so it was yesterday. So that's kind of vibe. Makes it less of you talking to a therapist, especially when it's a bubbly atmosphere. I think that's where we are going to end. I'm just going to say, lastly, before we open it up for questions, that the importance of today's, lecture or webinar rather, is actually not just because we want to talk, is we want us to self-reflect continuously. You can make this thing something you are doing, every day, so that you can improve, you can get better, and before you know it, right, your EQ is very, very high, compared to what it was 2 years ago, 6 months ago. And I'm going to open the door. We run out of time already, but I'm going to open the door for questions. So over to you, Omotola and Adibusola.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Lashibikon. I mean, I don't know how every other person in the audience feels, but trust me, this has been another amazing session on emotional intelligence. One of the reasons why we brought you back was because the first session, when we were even focusing on, applying emotional intelligence in our personal life, you were very vulnerable. You were sharing practical examples, and you've done this very same today. It's been so great from the beginning to the very end. And for me, one of my biggest takeaway today is self-awareness being the most important of the 5 domains of emotional intelligence. A lot of us struggle with self-regulation, especially when we're having difficult conversations or during conflict. Either you're on the high side or the person that is on the low side, who is also passive aggressive. It's not like the low is also good. The person is being passive aggressive. So it can really be both ways. So it's just been so great. And I was wondering if anybody has any question, please drop it in the chat box. This is the time to ask your question. But I'm going to start with my own very important question. I was very happy with the example with Omoti, but I wanted to ask, how do we differentiate between emotional conversation and a practical conversation? Because I feel like emotional intelligence is also important in being able to identify those two things. So, because sometimes when you think it's an emotional conversation and the person having conversation with you want practical solution, then you're really not communicating well. And when the person is having an emotional conversation and you're offering practical solution, you're also not communicating. So how do we delineate between the two?
You asked a very difficult question. You know why? Because I started, I started learning. Anyway, let me just say my personal story again. I'm the kind of person that when things happen to, we spoke about resilience, right? I'm trying, okay, how do we get out of this? How do we get out of this? That's how I'm always thinking. I don't want to be weighed down. And I just started learning it a couple of years ago. I've been married now for almost 9 years. I think it was the last 2 years that I realized that when my wife is talking to me and telling me what she's going through, she wants me to listen. She wants me to just be there and listen. But I start offering solutions from immediately start talking. And then it made me realize that the first thing, just listen, to be there. Right? To be there. The kind of person that I am, after listening for listening's sake, right? After listening for the sake of being there, rather, I start trying to see how can we help, and that's a good way. I'm asking a question. And so your suggestions can come in form of a question. First question, is there anything you think we can do? That opens the door. If the person says, I'm not even thinking of what to do right now. So, okay, retrace your steps and just be there. But if the person says, I don't know what to do, then that opens the door for you to then, maybe, do you think we should try this? Then as much as possible, when we phrase statements as questions, it's softer, it lands softer. So instead of saying, you know what, let's call Eric, I said Eric. Eric is Nigerian, many people know. So let's say, instead of calling, let's call Vueling. They can't just keep your luggage for 2 days. That's ridiculous. Instead of saying that, then we can say, do you think we should call Vueling? So typically when we phrase suggestions in form of questions, they land better, land softer. And you can then use it to gauge how to move forward with the conversation.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for sharing. Do we have any other question? Please help us to complete the feedback form. It really helps us get better. We always look forward to your feedback form. We read everything and we implement your suggestions for the next webinar. Dr. Tuatayo Lashibikon, we want to thank you very much for attending today's webinar, for preparing for the beautiful slide, and for the amazing presentation. It's always a joy to listen to you speak, not only about emotional intelligence, but other topics as well. We are very grateful to have you. We are so thankful that you are here today. We are very grateful. Thank you to everybody who has attended today's webinar. We hope that you've taken 1 or 2 things away that you would start acting on moving forward in your professional lives and in your workplace. I know that, a lot of us will probably have appraisal coming up December time, and we have more than enough time to build that social currency that we need before that time comes. So emotional intelligence, from my own experience, is not something that you just master at once. It's something that you keep learning. It's always interesting how someone who you think has, good EQ, and then you're like, oh, this is a flop. So it's something that you have to continue to reflect on and continue to build. And we hope that that's what you'll be taking away from today, wherever you are in your journey of self-awareness, self-regulation, empathy, motivation, and social skills. Thank you everybody for joining. You can follow myself or Omotola on LinkedIn. And for those of us who have joined, we'll definitely be sending the replay. If you join through the link, the event link, we'll send the replay in an email next week, Thursday. We will be having another webinar next month where we are going to be having talking about a very interesting topic. So interesting that you definitely want to attend. We are looking at psychosis in the context of karma. So that would be very, very interesting. And we are hoping that we will all join us to get our feedback, to see what psychosis is really all about, and learn about how to get help for anybody. Mental illness, 1 in 4 person experience mental illness. So we all cannot escape it. And the more we know about it, the better we can get the help that we need. So thank you everybody for joining. Have